This is my filterless, self-cleaning aquarium designed from the very start to handle most of the maintenance on its own. Fast-grown plants keep the cycle stable by absorbing ammonium as a nutrient source, which passively reduces the buildup of toxic ammonia and toxic nitrite. When the ammonium does run out, the plants will then switch to using any nitrate buildup as their primary nitrogen source, cutting down on the need for water changes. The plants in here also draw in a wide variety of dissolved ions from the water to fuel their growth, naturally managing the TDS levels as well, further reducing the need for intervention. At the same time, microorganisms, shrimp and snails all break down any decaying organic matter such as decaying plant leaves in the tank, removing the need for gravel vacuuming. So far everything is going according to plan, and this video is the 2-month update for the tank, and I want to go over everything that's happened in the last 4 weeks. If you are interested in trying this type of aquarium with one of your own tanks, I will link to my article in the description that goes over the whole process in a lot more detail. So back at the start of month 2, I was really impressed with how quickly the Tradescantia houseplants on the back rim of the tank were establishing themselves and starting to grow in the tank. You can see the layer of algae and biofilm forming on the tank's surface at that time as well, but I am slowly getting that under control. My Nurite snails were already in place to help with algae buildup and decaying plant matter, but early in the month my new shrimp order did arrive. One of these is a bag of 10 skittle shrimp for a different tank, but the other 3 are going in here, and it's 2 bags of 10 Neocaridina shrimp, with 3 of them going with the skittles in a different tank, and the other one is a bag of 5 Armano shrimp. Armano shrimp are absolute beasts when it comes to eating algae and breaking down decaying plant matter, but they are not essential for this type of setup to work. I floated the bags in the tank to temperature match them and slowly added water using a pipette to slowly acclimate the shrimp to the mineral content of my water. Once added, I did drop a food pellet in, and this clip shows how strong Armano shrimp can be. This little guy is latched onto a plant leaf with one set of legs while clutching the food pellet with the other, trying to eat as much of it as possible before any of the other shrimp realises food on the go. Luckily, there was still plenty of algae and detritus in the tank at this time, so none of the shrimp were going to go hungry. This is a great example of what I mean from the opposite side of the tank, where one of the orange Neocaridina shrimp was immediately grazing on the algae. Unfortunately, by the next morning I had lost one of the orange Neocaridina shrimp, which in all honesty doesn't surprise me. If you follow my channel, you may know that the orange Neocaridina shrimp line is the only one that I consistently have issues with. There just seems to be something off with that specific variety. I also keep regular red cherry shrimp, Bloody Mary, yellow, blue and white Neocaridina varieties, and none of them have been even close to as problematic as the orange Neocaridina variety in my tanks. Now this next part wasn't part of my original plan, but as you can see, the Helanthium Tenellum green carpeting plant that I've chosen for this tank is going through a transition phase. This is where the immersed out of water leaves of the plant are starting to melt back and make way for new submerged grown leaves, which are usually shorter and have a slightly different width. I'm not going to remove any of this manually, and I'm going to let the microorganisms, shrimp and snails break it all down and recycle the nutrients back into the ecosystem, just to show how this type of tank works. Unfortunately, a few days later I did lose a second Neocaridina shrimp in the tank, but as you can see in this clip, the rest of the colony have settled in well. They're just grazing on the different algae and biofilms. There's no signs of stress or anything like that with them. About a week after introducing the shrimp to the tank, I decided it was time to increase feeding, as they were quickly getting all of the algae under control. I chose dandelion leaf pellets by the Glassgarten brand over in Germany, so that's why the text on the packaging looks a little strange. Now these are optional, but dandelion leaves are naturally high in potassium, which lets me feed my shrimp and in turn add potassium back into the tank through their waste and any leftover food in the tank. Potassium is a commonly deficient nutrient in this type of tank, which doesn't use any liquid fertilizers, so this is a nice little trick to take advantage of. My shrimp definitely prefer spinach, mulberry and oak leaves over these because they get on them straight away, but they will still eat these eventually, and it serves as a quick, easy and affordable way to increase the potassium content of my tank. It is worth noting that these are 100% dandelion leaf pellets, not snowflake food, which can contain a lot of soybean husks that have minimal value in them. Alongside them, I also started adding 2 fluval bug bites bottom feeder granules per day because all of my shrimp, regardless of the type, seem to love these, and the extra bioload is basically just nutrients for my plants. Lately, I've really been enjoying the mounted houseplant side of the hobby, and I found some Fittonia plants on Etsy and I couldn't resist picking some up to try. Since these were sold as potted houseplants, I needed to remove all of the soil to avoid the risk of any ammonia spikes in the tank. To do this, I gave the roots a quick rinse in a glass of water and washed away as much of the soil as possible. Once cleaned, I placed them into a 3D printed plant holder, which I get from my friend who owns MMS Designs over on Etsy if you want to give them a try, and I'll leave an affiliate link in the description. Now, I will admit it did take me a few times of reorganising these to get them into a colour combination that I actually like the look of, but eventually I did get things just right. When I was happy, I placed them between the 2 different Tradescantia clumps on the back glass pane of the tank to add some extra colour pops to that area. Moving forward a few days later, and the algae in the tank was basically gone at this stage, and the snails, Armano shrimp and Neocaridina shrimp had done an excellent job and seemed to have turned their attention towards the decaying immersed Helanthium green leaves. A lot of people do remove this type of material from their plants, as there's a lot of different plants out there that will go through this transition phase, but it is a food source for your shrimp and snails, and then their waste is a food source for your plants, so with this type of tank I just leave it in there. Thankfully, I hadn't seen any more losses with my Neocaridina shrimp, so I am really happy. To help supplement the diets of my shrimp and snails, I did rotate between a few different foods each day throughout the month. This clip gives a really good look at the pale orange patch on the back of one of my orange Neocaridina shrimp, which means eggs are forming in her ovaries and she's ready to breed. The issue is that all of the other orange Neocaridina shrimp in here that I can see also seem to be at this phase 2, so I do think I might have ended up with an all-female group of shrimp. Right now, my plan is to wait another month or 2 to see if any of them become buried and start carrying eggs, or if I spot any babies. If not, I will pick up another batch of 10 orange Neocaridina shrimp in the future in the hopes of getting a male in there to start breeding the colony. This tank is running a Cheheros A2 Lite, which is far more powerful than what I typically use for my fish room. It's consistently caused issues with surface algae in all 3 of the tanks that I run one of these on, and I have been running it at a lower intensity to try and get it under control. At this point in the month I had it dialed back to 40% maximum light intensity, but I did decide to raise my USB water pump to the surface level in the tank for some surface agitation to try and help get the algae under control as fast as possible. Within about 6 hours the tank was already looking noticeably better. My plan is to keep the pump at the surface until things balance out a little bit more, since a lot of the nutrients from the melt and Helanthium green was still in the water column fueling the algae growth. But I did notice that the Limnophila Sessiliflora was definitely due a trim. With this type of tank, the only regular tasks that I actually need to do is trimming back the excess plant growth and adding food for the fish, shrimp and snails to eat. As I often say, some people remove toxins from the tank's water column with water changes, while other people let the plants absorb them, turn them into new plant growth and then remove those toxins by trimming those plants. Both approaches work perfectly well, and I have tanks in my fish room right now that use each approach. It just comes down to your personal preference or needs for your specific tank. A few days later it was time to add fish to the tank, and while the water parameters had been safe and stable for many weeks since before I even added the shrimp, I did choose to leave my Celestial Pearl Danios in their original tank to try and maximise breeding yields because it is breeding season. The whole purpose of this tank was to upgrade my Celestial Pearl Danio colony from a 25 litre or 6.6 gallon tank up to a 45 litre or 12 gallon tank, and the time had finally come to move them over. Unfortunately though, my Celestial Pearl Danio colony definitely had other ideas about being moved over, and with so much plant mass and hardscape in their old tank, it was basically impossible to catch any of them. In the end, I ended up having to debuild their old tank completely because these little guys are surprisingly fast and very active fish. And I'm not ashamed to say, even in their stripped down tank, it did take a surprisingly long time to catch all of them because they're just so fast. Now, I originally stocked that tank with 11 adult CPDs a year ago, and when I finally got all of them out, I counted 17 fish in total. 11 of them were adults, 3 were juveniles, and 3 were babies. Because the fish had already been living in my tap water for around a year, I didn't need to acclimate them for their new tank, I just moved them straight over as soon as they were ready. Now, the fish were a little stressed from the netting process because it took me so long to catch them all, so they did instantly swim to the back left corner, but being Danios, it really didn't take long for their confidence to come back and they started exploring their new home. This new tank is almost double the size compared to their old one, and while I rarely see celestial pearl Danios in the upper water column in my tanks, I am hopeful that the extra horizontal swim space, hiding spots and sight breaks will benefit them in this bigger tank. Thankfully, by the next day they seemed to have settled in a lot and they were consistently exploring their new home and sparring and breeding. Now, I do think that these little guys will snack on quite a few of the baby shrimp that are born in this tank, but again, I'm hoping the extra cover will make it so that more of the baby shrimp can reach adulthood. The fish were really skittish at first when I approached the tank and they would hide at the back, but I work from home and I can clearly see them from my desk when I'm not near the tank and they seem perfectly happy out and about, so overall I do think the move went well. A little after that clip was taken, it was feeding time, and I feed my Celestial Pearl Danios NT Labs Micro Crumb because their tiny mouths can't take Hikari Micro Pellets or the smallest bug bites formula. This was my first time feeding them in this new tank, but thankfully it wasn't an issue, and the CPDs got on the food as soon as it started to sink. Later that evening I did check the water parameters and ammonia, nitrite and nitrate were all at 0 ppm. Having undetectable levels of toxic ammonia and toxic nitrite in the tank is exactly what I want, but I do prefer to have my far less toxic nitrate levels between 5 and 10 ppm because I see it as plant food. I will work on boosting that a little bit more in the future once my fish and shrimp populations do increase in the tank. This clip was filmed around a week ago now, and as you can see, the fish are far more comfortable in their new home. Even if I'm right next to the tank glass, they don't dart to the back and hide or anything like that. These guys are constantly breeding right now, and I have noticed at least 2 males regularly sparring to be the dominant male in the setup. The decaying Helanthium Tellinum green leaves were breaking down fast, but that's exactly what this type of tank's for. I want the microorganisms, shrimp and snails to deal with all of that for me, so I don't need to trim it or gravel vac it or anything like that. Now, I do find this next clip quite funny in hindsight, but when it actually happened it did really freak me out. I work from home in the same room as this tank roughly 4 meters away, and I suddenly heard the sound of pouring water at a rapid pace. Panicking, I ran over to the rack to check for any leaks, but I couldn't find where the sound of running water was coming from. After a few tense minutes, I then realised what had happened, and one of the Nurite snails had climbed onto the water pump and was crawling across the outlet, redirecting the flow upwards so it was splashing back onto the surface of the tank, creating that sound. It has actually happened a few times since then as well, but now I know what it is, so it's quite funny looking back, but I honestly thought that one of my tanks did spring a leak. Here's a clip of the Armano shrimp stealing some food pellets once I added them to the tank, but just like all of the other tanks I have them in my setups, they do seem to prefer to stay near the hiding spots rather than come out into the open, at least while the tank lights are on. So that brings us up to today, and this is what the tank is looking like right now. Overall, I'm really happy with the progress of the tank and everything's going to plan. There is a green tint in the water, most likely due to algae or plankton blooms, and I also suspect that the Corbo wood is releasing more tannins than I expected into the water column. Neither of these are major issues if I'm honest, and the green tint should fade without any intervention from me once nutrient levels balance out. But I may do one final water change at the end of month 3 before settling into my long-term schedule of 1 or 2 water changes per year unless there's an emergency. The celestial pearl danios have settled into this tank really well and seem to be enjoying the extra space. The fish are just as active as in their old tank, but I have noticed some interesting behaviour. The dominant male, a few females and the younger fish tend to stay on the left-hand side of the hardscape, while a smaller group, likely the non-dominant males, potentially some females who are sick of breeding, stay on the right. Other than a few initial orange neocaridina losses that I mentioned, the shrimp have also settled in well in this tank and I'm happy with how they are progressing too. Over the next few weeks I will be keeping an eye out for buried females or baby shrimp in here, but if I don't see any, like I said, I will buy another batch of 10 to try and get some males in here to get the shrimp breeding. The Zebrina snail is doing fine, constantly grazing on algae and biofilm, but the red onion Nurite snail hasn't moved in a few days. I had this exact same thing happen with one of my old Zebrina snails in one of my first tanks, and it stopped moving for about 5 days, then one day it just decided it was hungry again and went back to eating. From what I've seen online, the easiest way to check what's happening with the snails is to remove it from the tank and give it a quick sniff to see if it smells like it's decaying, and I did that with this one. It smells perfectly fine, so I've popped it back in the tank to see if it's going to come around. On the plant side of things, the Limnophila Sessiliflora in here is an absolute beast, handling a lot of the natural water purification, but it is growing in a way where it's crowding the Ludwigia and preventing light penetration from getting to it. I'm 95% sure the Bacopa, which was sold to me as Bacopa Monnieri, is actually Bacopa compact, which is unfortunately a very common issue here in the UK. Because Bacopa compact is a far shorter mid-ground plant in its submerged form, it's pointless keeping it in this location because it's just not going to do anything. So I will probably trim it down and replant it somewhere else in the tank, and I am considering putting the Ludwigia Mini Super Red in the back left corner to stop the Limnophila from shading it so I can get it to develop its red colours. Another option for that area is to put some Medania Kaisak there, or maybe some Hygrophila castata, but that is a decision for later in the month. The Helanthium Tenellum green is behaving just as expected, and most of the decaying immersed leaf growth has now gone and been broken down and recycled into the ecosystem without me having to do anything. The Lagenandra is a new plant for me, but it does seem to be a slow grower and it is sending out some new submerged growth, so with any luck it will develop and I'm curious to see what it looks like once it's grown in. My Alternanthera Reineckii mini isn't showing the rich red colour that I'd like, but the plant itself does seem to be healthy. Since I've had the light dialed down to reduce algae growth, this might be the cause of the colour on this plant, and right now I have upped the light to 60% intensity, and I do plan to increase it every few days, so hopefully I can get it to develop its intense red colour. The Cryptocoryne Nurii is doing so well in here that it's already outgrown the Cryptocoryne Nurii over in my jungle betta-fish tank, which is 8 months old now. The Fittonia that I added did seem to go through a short adjustment period for a few days, but after that it seems to be doing fine and everything seems healthy, so I'm hoping it lasts. Out of the 6 Tradescantia varieties, 5 of them are absolutely thriving and 2 of them have almost tripled in their length already. So this tank is exactly where I wanted it to be at this stage of the build 2 months in, and I'm looking forward to seeing how things progress further as the ecosystem matures, more plants grow in, and hopefully I get some baby shrimp and more baby CPDs. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. I hope it's been helpful, thanks for watching and good luck with any similar tanks you try.